But if I can just now, I'm going to ask you a few questions, if I may, about you, about your
Yes.
life, about how you came from being an immigrant from Italy, living in the UK, to working with some of the most influential people in the world. This is some story, Giovanni.
My
You must
God,
sometimes
I
pinch
don't even
yourself.
know myself. I do. I was looking today at Defending the Indefensible, which is the six parts series, which we have, with the prime time, down company. And I've
Yes.
seen the people that I've represented, both nationally, internationally, and that. And I think to myself, where the hell did I have time to do all of this? And I've recorded 150 songs, and I've produced two successful albums, for what was relatively unknown artist, and made her into a known artist. They're selling enormous amount. And the documentary on that, incidentally, I posted a little bit of that on Facebook
Yes.
yesterday. Just the work that goes behind that. So
Okay.
I cannot tell you because I simply don't know. But I
Well, that's
think it
my
all
job to
started.
find out. That's my
Well, I
job to
know it.
pry.
I would like to go on that journey with you as well, because hell,
Mm.
I think what really kicked it off for me more than anything else was the case of John Goldfinger Palmer and Nicholas van Hoogstraten. That kicked everything off. Now, Palmer, when I got married and we had a honeymoon in Tenerife, there we were supposed to stay there for 2 weeks, or
Mm.
2 or 3 weeks. I think my consort had booked there, but of course I was always busy with bits and bobs, this, that, and the other. We had like Iraq coming up, we had Serbia situation there, so I was always on the phone. She would go down for breakfast, and she met a man. I was a very beautiful woman, so she met a man that would buy her a coffee and this and that, and talk to her. And obviously she speaks a number of languages, and she didn't tell me anything about this until sort of like the last day.
Mm.
So I said, listen, I can't do 3 weeks there. We have to go back in 7 days up there. So we went to the Bahia del Duque reception and said, I need my bill, please. And they said, sorry, your bill's been paid for. So what the hell are you talking about? No one pays my bill. They said, your bill's been paid by Mr. Palmer. And I said, who the hell is Mr. Palmer? And Mimi said, it's the man that who came over and had coffee with me a couple of days when you were on the phone and everything there.
Mm.
So I said, well, who is this guy? And of course, he owned part of the land of the hotel. He owned most of Tenerife. So we go back years later, fast forward. In 2001, I receive an email from a barrister saying that Mr. Palmer needs to see you, would like to engage your services. From nowhere, from nothing, from that. I'd forgotten all about this story there. So I make arrangements to go to London. He sends me his private jet, if you don't mind, to pick
Mm.
me up, books me in at the Intercontinental Hotel, pays for a limousine service to go anywhere
Yeah.
I want to. And I go to visit him at Long Lartin prison. And I said,
And he,
look, I'm happy to do your case there. I said, but why, he said, I'm the man that paid your honeymoon.
mm.
I said, well, I've put that together. I said, why did you do that? His reply was, for now.
Yeah. Well, let's put some context on it for our viewers and listeners, please, to who Mr. Jonathan Goldfinger Palmer was. Mr. Palmer was accused of being basically the fence for the money off from the Matt Brink's gold robbery, which was the largest robbery of its
He
kind, I
was
think.
acquitted.
He was acquitted, but for our viewers and listeners, we must let them know the full story. That I'm sure you would like that, the full in the cool light of day, the fairness of the audience is to judge for themselves, isn't it, dear friend? So this is what he was accused of. Yes, he was acquitted. And that takes us up to the point that you're talking about from the meeting that you had, the payment of the bill for the honeymoon, and then we fast forward in. Now, you're putting this down. I take it you're talking about this because A, this is a pivotal moment in your life, the Jonathan Palmer, and B, you're very proud of this, that your dealings with this, and it's okay to look back on one's achievements and say that was a good job. I take it that's why you're telling the story.
Well, I am. I mean, but can I also say something else as well?
Please, sir.
I was bloody lucky because when I took the case there, he had case files. They were over 3,500 A4 arch lever files in Chelmsford. So I went to look at Chelmsford there, and I just walked past and picked 3 files at random and took them back to the Crown Plaza Hotel in Cambridge, where I was staying, you know, for a while there.
Yes.
I had a bit of an upset stomach, so I went into the toilet, and I mean, I know it sounds funny, and I took a file with me. I accidentally dropped the file on the floor and opened, the page was open, a section 72, the Criminal Justice Act 1988, the notice to kick off confiscation. Now, to the media, I would say I'm brilliant this, I found it, I researched 3,600 files. That's crap. It didn't happen that way. I just got lucky. You know, the file fell and it went onto the page. And when I saw the page, I knew they'd got the wrong notice, you know, there. And I think, as I said to you before on a call, you know, what I told the judge was, he said, well, what difference does it make? They served the wrong notice. I said, well, you know, it makes this difference. If you want to divorce your wife, and he was divorcing his wife at the time, I said, you know, you would serve a Matrimonial Causes Act 1968. You know, but instead I'll serve you with a landlord and tenant eviction note. Well, we all know I meant to divorce you, and that's how we won. But it was pure fluke. Fluke. Nothing brilliant about me. Pure fluke. Now, sometimes in life you need a break. Sometimes in life you need a bit of good luck. In Italy we call it culo, you know, which means backside. I don't know why that should be lucky.
Well, it's the luck of the devil.
Normally the backside gets kicked.
It's the luck of the devil, and you are the devil's advocate.
Well, I am the devil's advocate.
There you go.
That cost the Crown 38 million. And can I just say that Palmer did pay me a substantial amount of money. He got over £1 million back for a defence costs order, which took me 3 days before the taxi master. And he got every penny back. I didn't take anything of that there. He wanted me to keep it. I refused to keep it because that was not the agreement. Important thing for me in life is agreements.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, we spoke to Michael, your son Michael Di Stefano. We spoke to him yesterday, and we did speak about this case and this matter and what it was like for him as your son, or as he lovingly, happily calls himself, your bag carrier. In Italian, it sounds a lot better, bag carrier. But he says that it was quite an incredible moment. And that he was very happy because from the judicial point of view, it gave him a lot of confidence that when the British judicial system had got it wrong, they could put their hands up and say, look, we got it wrong on a technicality, we made a mistake, but the justice was served.
They were forced at almost a judicial gunpoint. They were forced almost at judicial gunpoint to put their hands up. They'd made a screw up, and it was a big one. It was a massive one because, you know, that we took it very easy. Me, Peter Kelson, Dr. David Thomas, who is, you know, was professor of law at Cambridge, my good friend, God rest his soul, you know, there. We did so much work together with Jerome Lynch, with Trevor Berg, you know, Alex Dossat. I had an army, you know, I had 18 lawyers with me. We'd have and Palmer paid for everything. We'd have meetings at the Four Seasons, weekend, you know, getaways, all led by me. And when we won the case, the custom at the English bar is that you have a dinner. Whoever wins has to pay, and the opposition, you know, you know, you know, they didn't want to come because of it. Really? So we just had a good celebration ourselves, and we, you know, we cheered them on. But it was a massive point. I have to tell the viewers though also that subsequently, in a case called Simpson, it was decided by the Court of Appeal that that was wrongly decided, but it was too late. We'd already won. Although it was wrongly decided by Ricks, Lord Justice Ricks, we'd won, and they couldn't do anything about it. And they plugged that gap that if you serve a wrong notice, that's not fatal, but it is fatal. And I will fight to the death in any other case that, you know, I ever get, that it is fatal. You know, documents, people need to know precisely what the hell they're charged with, what they're facing, and what the case against them is. It's part of the European Convention, but it's also part of common law and common bloody sense. You need to know why I am arresting you, Marcus Boxer. You need to know all the Otherwise, how the hell can you defend yourself?
Well, this brings me into the question about you again. With the skill of a politician, you slipped it. You slipped your lead. But looking at your own personality traits, sometimes it's difficult for us to step back and take a look at ourselves. But obviously, anyone that knows a little bit about personality traits and a little bit about the psychology of a good lawyer, they'll say that obviously you have an amazing eye for detail, but within that detail, you have to be very organized and you have to follow a formula, a plan, and stick to it. Now, you're almost like a project manager, like a legal project manager. You have to get from A to Z in the right amount of time. You're time limited, of course, because the court are setting the dates. You can move things around, but they're really setting the rules of the game. And you have to do everything you can to find the right people with the right plan and get it done in the right time. So what is it about you, Giovanni Di Stefano, the devil's advocate, that separates yourself from the rest of the pack?
Well, I don't know if there is a pack to start with, so it's easy to be separated because there's no pack. But the law is not about knowing the law, it's about knowing the strategy of the law. You've got to know your end game. Whenever I take a client, I ask the client, what actually are you looking for? And if they say, I'm looking for justice, I would say, well, go buy a gun or something, metaphorically speaking there. If you're looking for justice, don't come here. If you're looking for money, looking to win a case, I'm your guy there. I told the IRA in Portlaoise prison, what are you looking for? We want you can't kill people. You kill people. You kill every person you kill a vote. And that vote that you've killed, maybe 5 or 10 other people would have voted for you. They won't vote for you anymore. So, it has a knock-on effect there. You've got to be able to recognize what is the problem and how to resolve it. And you don't tell the client or the person what they cannot do. They already know what they can't do because they've come to you. You've got to tell them what to do, how to do it, and how we can do it. And no guarantees, because in the law, in life, there's only one guarantee, Marcus, that at some stage, someone will ask you to pay tax. That is the only guarantee that you got from the moment you're born.
Indeed. Indeed. And you were asked this question during the BBC documentary, which we will leave the links to, called Notorious. You were asked the question by the BBC interviewer, why people come to you more than the rest. Now, when I mentioned the pack, I'm talking about your competitors at the jury's in court that have got all their other fancy chambers and they've got their own track records of defending people. But they've said, I want Giovanni Di Stefano, because it seems after the Palmer case, you were just besieged with requests of representation. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And let me tell you, it's still correct to this day. There's a few murder cases that I'm looking at today in the UK, just looking at to see if there's anything. And I've spotted something in one. An indictment is wrong, a murder case where it isn't said what he's guilty, he's charged with murder, but contrary to what? They forgot to put in, I'm not going to tell you the name of the case, they forgot to put in contrary to common law. So the indictment is defective. What do you do? Well, the best you can get is a retrial. And since it was a joint enterprise case, there's a possibility of getting a different verdict, especially as one person got manslaughter. So it's the eye to detail that, one of my colleagues sent it to me there, who is a KC, and he hadn't spotted it. He's just simply hadn't spotted. But whenever you accuse a person of something, you also have to tell them what law have you broken, what the law that he has, so that you can check the law to make sure that the law is consistent with what you've broken, because very rarely it is. So yes, I am very, very much in demand, because of that. But I will only take cases now that have a specific intellectual interest to me, like this case here. Joint enterprises and conspiracies are one of the most dangerous elements of international justice. In Italy, it's associazione a delinquere. I mean, the conversation right now you and I have, if we go in to say, well, we should do this to that person, that immediately is a conspiracy to do something, even though we might even be joking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the whole conspiracy
so
ideology.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, indeed. And
the conspiracy ideology comes from Guy Fawkes, of course, because before that there was none. The idea of conspiracy comes from, from there. And I think it's something that Britain, should, and Italy as well, incidentally, associazione a delinquere, because many people are arrested. But we only have a small prison population, like 50,000. You got bloody 100,000. I mean, the prison is shaking. It's not fit for purpose anymore now because it's too full, and they need to do something about it. I have a solution for them, there, but that's a matter for them, not for me. I live in Italy and Monaco.
Well, you live in Italy, and the island of Lampedusa isn't a million miles away from where you are. And looking at politics now, look, so the law, politics, justice, geopolitical activities are all that. They're all your themes. They're all where you excel. Looking at the situation from Lampedusa now, this also spills over, unfortunately, into the Middle East, because this is going to expand. Millions of people are going to be fleeing. They're all going to be heading to countries that are at their maximum of capacity of what they can do with their infrastructure right now. Is Italy in crisis right now from mass unlimited immigration?
Well, it is, and it's there, but Giorgia Meloni is trying to do something about it. It's trying to make automatic expulsions there. But the problem is not people coming in. We need to resolve why they want to come. And I have sort of a weird theory. You see, people from different countries, they watch our game shows, in England, in France, in Italy. They see how simple the questions are. What's the capital of Italy? And they think, how I can, remember, the Middle East and the African countries are far more intelligent and far more better educated, than the West. And they think, hell's bells, this is easy. We can get this kind of money because we know the answers. They won't give like difficult questions like when there was double your money, or when we had a proper educational system in both Italy and England. So I'm not separating at the moment because it's something that needs to be addressed, to have that there. So they see that, and it's not just wanting to come to that country. They want to come to an easy country. And if you can answer what's the capital of France, that's an easy bloody country. Easy. Right. If those are the game shows that we have, I ask your viewers to pick any game show at random and look at the questions that are asked. It's absurd.
In all seriousness, though, Giovanni, your country has been flooded. Many of them will stay. Many of them will go. You don't know who these people are. A lot of them will have ill intent. A lot of them, they're emptying the jails and they're fleeing. If you're a fugitive on the run, the game plan is this: easy. Get to Calais, throw away your ID, tell them that you're gay, tell them that you're oppressed, tell them if you stay in your own country, you're going to be killed, and it's straight to the UK you go. Is that fair?
That is absolutely fair. You've hit the nail on the head. So what is required now is a new convention on asylum. We need to review that. The last one was in the 50s. Yes. 50s was a completely different era. The war had just ended. Yes, there were refugees, but refugees that added something. When my parents came to the United Kingdom in 1959, my father and we in 1961, he had to sign on at a police station for 8 years. Every Saturday, he had to have a fixed job. He couldn't adhere to any of the social services, the limited ones that were there at the time. And he had to prove that he could add something to the country, not subtract. Yes, we got a council house in 1964. We had to wait the first 4 years of me and my mother being there as a family before we got a council house there, because those were for British people. We had to make do with living with my auntie and uncle in a 58 square meter house there. So boy, I've seen it rough. I've seen the rough side, but I've also seen the other side. I have a wonderful home in Beverly Hills, in Walden Drive there. My dream was at that time, when I was young, to be David Selznick and Irving Thalberg, to buy at the age of 8, to buy an MGM and to have a house with a white facade, a driver, and to have a scaling steps, with a second floor, and with a beautiful woman to come down to greet me when I came. I got all of that. I did it. I did it before I was 30.
Against the odds, if you don't mind me saying, against the odds.
But again, coincidence.
Really?
What started with MGM, I don't know if my son told
Yeah, there was
you,
an argument
but
in
what
a queue.
started,
Please
the guy
elaborate
tried to-
about this argument in a queue. Who was your argument with?
Well, as it happens, it turned out to be Giancarlo Peretti. You know, Alberto. You know, I would go. You know, in the Beverly Wilshire, hotel there in the
All right.
Polo Lounge.
Mhm.
I was certainly been there for years, and he was a friend of mine, the head waiter. And a guy comes in with 2 or 3 blondes, you know, and starts pushing in. I said, whoa, 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 what are we doing here?
Mm.
He said, no, I said, I don't give a fuck who you are. I said,
Mm.
I'm Giovanni Di Stefano there. And then this is in his broken English. I said, mate, are you Italian? Are you French? Are you? He said, sono Italiano. I said, well, say Italian. If you're Italian, back of the queue, please, there. He said, chi sei tu? Who are you? I said, I'm Giovanni Di Stefano. He said, can I share a table with you there? He said, I'll get rid of the blondes.
Mm.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Pure coincidence. And an argument in a bloody Beverly Wilshire hotel for the Polo Lounge. And that same day at 5 p.m., I was senior executive vice president of Pathé Communication Corps Confinance, which went on to buy MGM UA. That same day, he liked my style. I was the only one that challenged him.
That's
all
some
the
way
others,
to,
you know, were just
that's an
didn't
incredible
care. But I care. You ain't pushing into me.
Well, that's an incredible story and such a chance meeting. So you must put some of this into fate. Do you hold any faith in fate or destiny?
There's 2 aircraft that I failed. There are 2 planes that I failed to get on that both crashed. So it must mean that, you know, I even though Wikipedia said I've been dead
Yeah, you
3
died.
times. I mean,
You
I
did
think
die a
pinch
few years
myself,
ago.
I'm still here.
We are communicating through another portal. We should maybe let some of our viewers know. on a humorous side, yeah, Wikipedia now must be seen as complete comedy, the funny papers.
But they cause a lot of damage to innocent people.
They do.
The same equal damage, psychological damage, than that, you know, being
Defamation,
in a
is
war
that fair?
zone there.
Defamation.
And so some years back, well, it's more than defamation. In Italy, it's a crime, defamation, because a man's honor is a crime if you challenge his honor. In England,
absolutely.
There are certain circumstances where there is criminal, but it's limited. It's more a civil tort. It's the tort of defamation. But what Wikipedia has done, you know, specifically in my case, I let them get on with it, write what the hell they want to write. But then it just pissed me off there. Jimbo Wales has gone a step too far. With Mike Milken and the Wolf of Wall Street, they are American entrepreneurs who committed very serious crimes and went to prison for a much longer period than I did there. And yet I'm an Italian fraudster. So I thought, hell no, I'm not standing for this. And an application that I put into the courts for 50 million some years back, I withdrew it because I spoke to Jimbo Wales. You know, we had a sort of agreement that he would only write stuff that could be potentially verified with more than one source, and all's well. But then, you know, what happened was that I wrote an article about him because he dumped his girlfriend and his partner by text. Really? And I thought, Jimbo, this you can't do that, man. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? Have you got no balls? I mean, you what? Not very gentlemanly. So we fell out, and since then, you know, there to write all sorts of complete utter nonsense. Me dying 3 times. I mean, like that. So what I did the other day, I had enough. Yes. You know, I issued a cease and desist of $500 million. It's now gone up and $1 million a day. So let him write what he wants. And I believe that people have the freedom to say and write what they want, providing they take the responsibility for the consequences. And those are going to be the consequences. And I know that he's trying to appoint a new president or chairman of his foundation there. And that's going to be seriously complicated for him, because I will not go away. Cost me nothing, you see. It'll cost him a shitload of money in lawyers, but cost me nothing.
Well, you know.
So that's the position. And anyone who repeats what Wikipedia say about me, which is false, I will sue as well. I don't like suing. It's a failure on my part. When you sue a person, or when you block a person online, it means you've failed to get through the message. But sometimes, as I said to you, then punishment and retribution has to be there and compassion available. But sometimes that compassion has to be withdrawn when people have a continuous conduct. And I say this to all your viewers there: if people have a continuous conduct towards you that is not ideologically correct and creates you a problem, of your reputation, you have to go to court. You just simply have to do that. And there is no other alternative. No other steps, incidentally. We don't do Godfather gangsterisms or anything there. That's that. Just take it to the law. You may win, you may lose. You just have to, you win, you lose, you lose.
Well,
you've got to do it.
You hope you get a fair trial. You hope you get a fair trial. But unfortunately, Giovanni, the legal system in the UK has changed somewhat over the years since your successful verdicts for Mr. Palmer and Mr. Hoogstraten, just to name two. We talked about this with your son yesterday, about the situation that we're facing in Scotland, where we're having juryless trials.
Well, the law allows it. I mean, the law was passed. People voted for the party that, introduced that. There's not so much juryless trials. Of course, in Italy, we're quite accustomed to that. So is in Serbia, so is in Albania, so in a number of other countries there. You don't need a jury. It's really, for example, the judge's summing up of a case is only in Australia and the UK. Other countries don't have it. Don't need to be reminded, because if you've been paying attention to the case, you don't need a judge to remind you.
Okay.
So
well, then you get Heather Hallett.
The UK
you get Heather Hallett sitting you get Dame Heather Hallett sitting across from you. Your good friend.
Well, Heather and I go back a long way. That it's best we don't go down. She should never really have sat in on my case, but she's been screwed over. They promised her the Lady Chief Justice, and they didn't give it. They gave it to Ian Burnett, who was only a Mr. Justice. That is not even a Lord Justice. So she got pissed off, and she retired from the bench early, and they made her the COVID inquiry chairman.
Yes.
And there, but she, she's made a very, very serious mistake there, and I have had correspondence with her since. And as I said, retribution must be there, but compassion available and forgiveness available. So with Heather, we go back a long, long way with Heather. I just have to apply the compassion and the forgiveness.
Well, that's
the same with the trial judge who committed, who died, the police officer who died. The trial judge, Mr. McCreath, before he died, he wrote me a letter, and he said that we were both victims in this matter there, and that I was, and listen to the words, I was the sacrificial lamb in a drunken wolf's party. That is what the trial judge, and he died 3 months before I came out, and the police officer died as well, and two other witnesses, all suspicious deaths of committing suicide there, because they could no longer, they knew what it would be like when I came out, that I would find the truth. I would find the documents. We found a document saying that my case was politically motivated, for God's sake.
But the documents
their
weren't
own
allowed.
Documents.
The documents weren't allowed.
They were not allowed. And he wouldn't. No, because if I had been able to show those there, then
that's right.
They may have still have been a finding of guilty, but at least it would have been a fair trial.
Yeah, these were the documents from the Italian court findings in 1987. Is that right?
That's correct. There, when you are a director of companies here, you are the one responsible for everything that your employees do. But because of their time barredness, there, Berlusconi had 198 criminal convictions against him, but you couldn't even use one because they were all time barred. So, they falsified an awful lot they falsified my PNC, the police officer. He put down offences that I couldn't possibly have committed. And when I went to prison, what then happened afterwards was that 2-3 years later, an officer from High Point Prison wanted to send me to open prison. Now, to get to open prison, you need your PNC and a police report. And lo and behold, we get the PNC showing that I only have one small criminal conviction in 1975 as a student for stupidity that I did, and I got 3 months suspended or 9 months suspended, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was, in any case,
you were looking at 22 years, weren't you, Giovanni? You were looking at a 22-year stretch at one point.
For the script. But you know what, Marcus?
Yeah,
I forgive them all because I have to, if I have
Yeah.
vendetta in my heart, and I could easily go down, I need to dig a number of graves, but the most important one is my own.
Well,
So,
indeed.
you know, I'd
Indeed.
have to move forward. It's happened. It
Exactly.
shouldn't have happened. We know it's a bad system, but it's the only system we have, and we have to move on to do the best we can. And as I said to you, that's down to your Scottish. I persuaded the Justice Secretary to really release Al Megrahi. Now, that's one of our appeals that we'll be doing in one of our, you know, that when me and David Martin Sperry will be defending Al Megrahi,
Okay.
the Lockerbie bomber there.
Yeah.
Remember what?
That's an emotional case. That is a very emotional case for a lot of people around the world, especially in Lockerbie, especially in Scotland.
But compassion must be available. And he released him because he was done. So I'm applying my compassion to the people that have caused me harm. I forgive you.
Well,
and let's move on.
Sometimes in life you have to do that, but for the sums of money that we're talking about, it's funny. I had a conversation with your son, Michael, yesterday, and I brought up the name Nadeem Zahawi. Now, Nadeem Zahawi was the Chancellor of the Exchequer while he was owing £10 million to the Treasury, to HMRC, that he had not disclosed. Now, it's quite interesting when you put those two together, your case and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, £10 million, the amount we're talking about, and he got a tap on the wrist.
Well, you got 700 grand really on mine, of which 500,000 the Thakrar brothers said you can keep.
So
they were threatened by the police for to charge them with other frauds in their companies if they didn't give evidence against me.
Of course.
They threatened another person, a guy called Wilkinson, who was an arms dealer, that he was about due for parole if he didn't give evidence against me, and say, but you know, that they would and if he did, they would favor his parole. See, it's a disgraceful way of prosecuting. And what's happened is that the prosecutor's once been made a judge. One is now the Attorney General of a Caribbean island. That is not the country that I know. I love the United Kingdom. You know, it created me, it made me.
Yeah.
I should have gone to RADA had it not been for my mother. You know, I had an audition for RADA in 1972, and the speech I did was "Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?" I think I sent it to you. I may have done. If not, I will do. And I passed the audition, but it needed my parents' signature because I wasn't 18. And and my mother said, "We didn't come to England for you to grow your hair long and that have flared trousers."
Yes.
And that study, you need to study. What's this actor, musician? And therefore the rest is legend. But I'm a bloody good record producer. I'm a good musician. That is what I wanted to be. That's all I ever wanted to be. I didn't want to do anything else. Sex, drugs.
Well, look, it's
Shakespeare
said the world's a stage. The world is a stage. And when you go into the court, you are Giovanni Di Stefano, the devil's advocate, the ball breaker, the ball buster. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what any of us look like, but it's the attitude. It's the determination that comes from within. It's almost like a spiritual side of yourself that you can evoke. You quote Noel Coward, don't you, in the BBC documentary Notorious?
Talent to amuse. Yeah, Noel Coward is one of my favorite. But remember, when you go into court, how you introduce a case. May it please your lordship, I act for Marcus Botzer. My learned friend, his name is with me, for the Crown, my learned friend, that. But I act.
Yes.
We act.
Yeah. Theatre.
It's an acting role.
Everything's
we
theatre.
Don't say we represent. I represent. I act.
Well, it is all an act.
And that's right. So maybe I did make it as an actor.
You must have done, because you pulled it off. You convinced them. You convinced them that you knew what you were doing.
We won some terrific cases, including one from jail. There, you know, from Wandsworth Prison. I mean, I don't know if you have time just for 1 minute for me to explain that case.
Of course. Please do.
Well, there was a guy that I should have dealt with this case in 2006, but unfortunately, I had to go to Iraq, so I gave it to Alan Newman QC, and he lost the case, the appeal. So when I go into Wandsworth Prison, the first few days, there's a fucking 6'6" giant that says, "Hey, are you the lawyer guy?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Are you Di Stefano, that guy there?" He said, "I need words with you." I thought, "Oh God, here we go. What the hell have I done?" He said, "Listen," he said, you should have taken my case there. It was a murder case there. They'd first been charged with GBH, and then more than a year later, they'd been charged with murder because the guy died. I mean, it was a tragic, horrible. It was a milkman. I mean, they robbed him. I mean, they're only young, but he'd already done 11 years, and he'd got one more year to go. So I said, look, I'm very sorry, but I had to go. He said, I know. He said, I'll let you off that. He said, but do me a favor, mate. Can you have a butcher's at the papers? So I have a look at the papers.
Yes.
And lo and behold, I find out that in the year and a day's rule, before you can apply that rule, you need you need leave of the Attorney General. It's part of the Act. They bloody didn't get it. They didn't get permission to proceed with the prosecution. And would you believe it? We won.
You won.
6 months later, we won the case, yeah.
Wow.
And Karen Todner, who did the case there, you can speak to her as well. She's known me for many, many years.
Sure.
She said, I've never known a case where a guy from prison wins a massive murder case in his first few days, from Wandsworth jail. So that also will go into the documentary.
It will go.
But you see, it's not me that's good. It's them that are useless.
Well,
how
but
the hell
you're very
can
modest.
you forget?
You're very modest.
No, but how the hell can you forget to comply with the law? You only need to look at the year and a day's rule, look at the legislation. Any prosecutions requires the leave of the Attorney General. They just didn't get it. They just didn't bother. They went ploughing along, which means the whole 11 years was for the square root of sweet FA.
Yeah. I mean, Giovanni, you're associated with a plethora of names. A lot of them infamous characters, of course. You're associated. There are names like Charles Manson, Gary Glitter, Jonathan King. Obviously, there's Kenneth Noye. So, sometimes people think, is this true? Does he actually know these guys? Did he actually represent? Did he have conversations with them? I mean, of the names I've mentioned, is any of those untrue?
None of them are untrue. Jonathan King, I mean, there's filming outside the prison there. I mean, you couldn't make that up. And he says, my lawyer, Charles Manson, he sent me a signed photograph, which I posted. Incidentally, let me just tell you about Manson.
Please
what do you think he was charged with?
Well, it was charged with organizing the Sharon Tate deaths and
he was charged with inspiring murder.
I've never bloody
heard.
But it was Tex Watson and the girls who actually performed the murders.
Yes, but hold him. Never mind about the others.
Yeah.
His was about inspiring.
Right.
He inspired murders. I've never bloody heard of it.
No.
There, and he got all that time for inspiration, to murder. And when it came to his trial, I mean, I spoke to him on the telephone, from his prison there.
Really?
He was not there to put a screen. Many of your viewers won't even know this. They had to put a screen in front of the jury because the judge says you are mesmerizing the jury, you're brainwashing the jury to vote in your. I mean, you couldn't make this up. If anyone received an unfair trial, it is he, and that's the reason that I made the application to the president.
Did he actually tie up the Tate LaBianca couple?
No.
So he didn't even go in.
No, I mean, he was charged solely with being the inspirator. And let me tell you also, another person in a similar role, Bin Laden. Bin Laden wasn't the person who committed any of those. He was the inspirator to those there. He inspired people to commit
back to conspiracies.
Those atrocities at the World Trade Center.
Or back to conspiracy.
I've never bloody heard of inspiring. I've never heard of it. I don't know, but obviously they murdered him, and I think they murdered. I mean, incidentally, on Bin Laden, let me tell you, they could have brought him out alive. They didn't have to kill him, but you wonder why they killed him instead of bringing him out alive. The rest were kept alive. There's only 2 people.
Dead men tell no lies.
Dead, the guards. But who knows what would have happened at trial? What he would have said there, because he had American.
That's what I mean. Dead men tell no lies.
That's right. So there you have that. There, Kenny Noye, of course. Kenny, I acted for Kenny there.
Yeah.
That was another interesting situation there, where we made an application when he came back. He was extradited from Spain. Now Spain does not have life sentences. They have like maximum 26 years. Sure. So when you extradite a person under the specialty rule, you have to comply with that specialty rule. In other words, when you try the person, it has to be tried as if he was in Spain with the sentencing. So what they did, they gave him a life sentence. We made an application to court, and lo and behold, we managed to get an undertaking from the Crown that when he'd completed his tariff, you know, he would be released on license. And where is he? He's been on license.
Well, he's out
A number of while, and he's out at home. And you know, that's right. And that's thanks to that agreement, because Britain has a habit of not respecting agreements. I won't stand for that.
Well, Kenneth Noye was acquitted,
I will not
wasn't
stand
he?
for them not
He was acquitted
I
for
won't stand
killing
for the Italian government.
Just sorry, Giovanni, to interrupt. Kenneth Noye was acquitted for murdering a police officer that was on his grounds, but he acted in self-defense, didn't he? Well, that was a court's ruling.
Well, that's right. He got not guilty, and that's the end of it. But he received, you know, the sentence, and that primarily for that.
Yes.
He didn't receive it for Stephen Cameron, because, I mean, the Stephen Cameron, it wasn't planned.
That was the road rage incident.
The road rage incident.
A young 19-year-old was
not tall,
killed, murdered. Yeah.
Cameron was, you know, was a tall guy. He was younger than him.
Sure.
So, but it's still, as I said to Kenny, but what the hell were you thinking of, man? You know, you know. But again, there was a falsity in his documentation. A guy called Dr. Heath, Michael Heath, the pathologist, who I'd come across in a number of cases in Shipman, in Cullen, a number of other cases, said that there were 2 stab wounds. Now, if there's 2 stab wounds, there's an element of intent. But when I looked at the post-mortem photographs with care, I found that there's only 1 stab wound, which makes it different. We went to the Court of Appeal, you know, and, you know, we went with Claire Montgomery QC, and she's one of the beautiful, brilliant barristers with fantastic mind. We thought we'd won that case there, but they ruled against us. Claire refused to come to court to take the hand down judgment. Who had to take the hand down judgment? GDS. And the police officer said to me, "You're always representing these scumbag." He said, "We're going to come after you one day." I said, "Well, you know, I've heard that before, and I've heard much worse." I said, "Carry on, mate."
Well,
and that's what happened in
that's
Kenny
what happened
Noye's
in that.
case.
I mean, you mentioned Harold Shipman as well. You're famous, or infamous, some may say, Giovanni, for on the BBC documentary. You said if it was called Harold Bloody Smith, he would have been free. But the evidence that they had against Shipman really seemed to go on the lawyer's letter, on the solicitor's letter, that the daughter.
Well, first of all, it was very similar to Bodkin Adams, Dr. John Bodkin Adams. You can have a look at that later in the 50s. He was an Eastbourne doctor that supposedly killed a number of his patients, and he had like over 100 gifts from wills and everything. However, in those days, you could only be indicted with 1 murder, because look, let's look at it logically. If I indict you with 16 murders, the jury's going to say, "Hell's bells, what the hell is he doing there? There has to be something." So to make it fair, they used to indict with 1 murder only, and that was the end. They used the best evidence rule.
Okay.
And they got the worst evidence in that there, and he was acquitted of that. However, he was convicted of prescribing drugs and this and a fraud. But would you believe that while he was in prison for a couple of years, they reinstated him as a bloody GP? And he actually had a practice in the prison where he was, and outside, as a general practitioner.
Are we talking about Harold Shipman?
You couldn't make this up.
Harold Shipman.
No, we're talking about Dr. John Bodkin Adams.
Bodkin.
That's what would have happened to Shipman.
Right.
Shipman had his own practice at Wakefield Prison. I think I published the letters from Shipman to me, and from a prisoner who said he didn't commit suicide. He was murdered by the screws. A guy called Rodney King, who was in for murder. So as soon as I received that statement, I took it, to the police and the CPS. Would you believe that within a month, Rodney King disappears from the prison system?
Right.
Because Shipman's may well have killed 1 million people. He may well have done. But his trial was not fair. The forensic pathology there left much to be desired. How can you do a forensic pathology when you've cremated the bodies? There was only 1 body, late Mrs. Grundy, God rest her soul.
Yes.
And they took, and I saw that forensic pathology there, and it was dodgy. at the end of the day, you have to decide, as I told you in the Let Me trial, what actually is mercy and what is medication.
Well, indeed,
That's what you have to decide.
You're acting. You know, these
And I
people
think he
still
got,
need a defense. They still need to have representation. I mean, if we are going to run a judicial system, they have to have representation, and your job is to find in their favor, regardless of what
Well, he
anyone else
got
thinks.
representation from someone who never done a criminal trial. She's now a lady justice, you know,
Really?
there, and he was paid for by the
Right.
Medical Defence Union. They picked a barrister, Nicola Davis, you know, who had never done a criminal trial in her life.
Yeah.
Now that just goes to show how you need to pick the right. When you, do you remember at school when you're the captain of the six-a-side?
Yes.
And you got the people lined up, you pick who you want one each. You better pick the right ones. Same in law. It's called a beauty contest in law. You know, you go around and look at which barrister that you want. It's called a beauty contest. That's a little tip.
Well, you picked a winning team. You picked a great team. You seem to have you had a barrister who was a former car salesman.
Jerome Lynch, yeah, he was also in the Scottish. He was also in the People's Court in Scotland, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he's had a pretty successful career, hasn't he, Mr. Lynch?
He's in the Caribbean now, doing defence. He's in the one of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Beautiful there, only 8,000 people.
He's well out the way,
wonderful life,
tucked away
sunshine,
safely.
Goes to court in the morning. That's right, there. And he's going to be the prosecutor in Al-Magrahi. So I don't know if you've seen
little bits. Yes, I've seen he's
the
put out
trailer
some
on
media.
that there. We had. That's right. You know, and he knows his onions. He came late into the day, but no one says that you have to go in at the age of 18. You can go in at the age of 38. For the older you go into the law, the better you'll be because you have experience behind you. What the hell does a 21-year-old barrister do in the Supreme Court? He had no experience of life.
Indeed, Giovanni. And we see it in the political world as well. We see all these youngsters, like 25, 26-year-olds, who were bag carriers for senior MPs. And now there's no experience whatsoever. We see it in Italy, but to a certain extent, I mean, the SNP, it looks like a creche in there. They don't even look like they've had acne.
The SNP, somehow over 600 grand and a camper van have been destroyed. And whoever's done that job, I want to hire them as my PR.
Well, indeed. Look, we've had an extended time with you today. We've obviously, with a life like you've had, you can't cover it all. You know, it's like the Beatles catalogue, and that's why Jim Sheridan is working with yourself and other major networks to produce these stories and give them the righteous time and artistic effort that they deserve. Would you like to just fill our viewers in on what's going on there in the last few minutes, please, Giovanni?
Well, Jim Sheridan, for the last 2 years, we've done some filming already of part of my life. You know, he will do awards and all. I mean, you know, not all of my life has been, you know, okay. I've made some serious mistakes, you know, classical mistakes in my life, especially as, you know, that there's children from two separate
family
mothers.
Side. Yeah,
that's right. Family side always suffers. I remember John Platt Mills, QC, who has 9 children, saying that, you know, in his book, that were it not for his consort, he wouldn't have been able to function there, because with 9 children, he was the craze barrister. You know, he was a very famous barrister there. Me also, you know, without, you know, a strong woman at consort behind, who's always kept in the shadow and everything. And we do that purposefully. But I will be recording a song and filming it, that very shortly in the next few days, called "The Wind Beneath My Wings." I've reorchestrated it,
really,
redone it my way, and that's dedicated to her.
Beautiful. So there is a throbbing heart beneath that tough Teflon exterior. There does be a kind, loving man and a loving heart and a family man.
Well, I mean, I do my very best for all my children. I mean, I treat them all the same. I hate them all the same. I mean, there's an old saying that parents are the bones that children sharpen their teeth on.
Exactly. And I think that's a beautiful note to end it on right there, my friend. All it remains for me to do.
Thank you very much.
all that remains for me to do is to thank you very much indeed, Mr. Giovanni Di Stefano, the Devil's Advocate. We will leave all the links to your ongoing projects and your work and say thank you very much for spending time with us again. Thank you very much, Giovanni.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you.